We're still continuing to learn how to solve systems by substitution, but this time we don't have a variable that's already all alone. So we're going to have to solve for a variable before we substitute. In example 1, we have two good choices. You want to try and find a variable that has a coefficient of 1. It's already mostly alone. If we try to solve for this y, we would end up dividing by 2, which would give us fractions. Most of you don't appreciate solving equations with fractions, so it will be a lot easier to find a different variable. The two variables that are good choices are the x in the first equation and the y in the second equation. The y in the second equation has a coefficient of -1, so it will be even easier to use the x in the first equation. So that's the one that I'm going to solve for. To get x alone, we'll subtract 1 from both sides and end up with x equals 2y minus 1. To begin our substitution, we'll put a box around the value for the expression that x equals, and we put a box around x in the second equation, replacing that x with 2y minus 1, distributing our -2. Do not distribute it to that y that is outside the parentheses. Combining like terms, -4y minus y gives us -5y. Subtracting 2 from both sides. And dividing both sides by -5. Solving for x, I'm going to go back up to the red equation where I have x equals. I'm going to replace y with -1. 2 times -1 is -2, and -2 minus 1 is -3. My solution as an ordered pair is -3, -1. We need to check it in the equation that we did not use to solve for x. So I'm going to replace x with -3. I'm going to replace y with -1. This is another one of those that you need to be careful of. There's a negative in front of the y that you cannot ignore, and the y itself is -1. So you need to keep both of those negative signs. -2 times -3 is 6. Subtracting a negative is the same thing as adding, and 6 plus 1 is 7. So we got our answer to check. And we'll take a look at another word problem. Looking at the question, it's what was the cost of each item? The two items that were bought were pencils and notebooks. So I'm going to say P is the cost of the pencils, and N is the cost of the notebook. There were two people that made purchases, so I'm going to write an equation for Alexis's purchase, and I'll write a separate equation for Kendrick's purchase. Alexis bought 2 boxes of pencils. So to get the total cost for the pencils, we would take the 2 boxes she bought times the cost of the pencils, and she bought 5 notebooks. So we would add to that the 5 notebooks times the cost of the notebook, which would give us her total at checkout of $6. Very similar for Kendrick, he bought 6 boxes of pencils, plus he bought 1 notebook, and his total was $4. To solve this system, we have one variable that has a coefficient of 1, so I'm going to get n alone by subtracting 6p from both sides. Putting a box around the expression that n equals. Going to the first equation, I am going to replace n with 4 minus 6p. We get 2p plus 5 times 4 minus 6p equals 6. Distributing that 5, we get 20 minus 30p equals 6. Combining our like terms, 2p minus 30p is -28p. We still have that plus 20. Subtracting 20 from both sides. -28p equals -14. And dividing both sides by -28. We do get a decimal on this one. We don't write money in terms of fractions. When you divide -14 by -28, you get 0.5. But because this is money, we're not going to write it as 0.5. The pencils cost 50 cents per box. Going back to the equation that I had n solved for, I'm going to substitute that 50 cents in for P to find the price of the notebooks. 6 times 50 cents, or half of 6, is 3. So the notebooks cost $1 each. And finally, to check my solution, I'm going to use that first equation that I did not use to solve for n, and I will replace P with 50 cents and n with $1, and see if that gives us Alexis's total of $6. 2 times 50 cents is 1, 5 times 1 is 5, and 1 plus 5 is 6, so that checks out. If you feel ready for the U-Try problems, go ahead and attempt them. Otherwise, the 2 examples that I did not cover in this video, we will start together in class and we can try the U-Tries after that.